Great. Greetings from Tokyo. This is Daisuke. And just give me 1 second here while I get ready. Oh, here we go. Great. Perfect. Okay. Wonderful. Yes, so oh gosh. Great. Great. Okay, so greetings from Tokyo. This is Daisuke with yet another random live stream, and I really have to apologize for the randomness here, but I hope you can understand. That's just the way that's my makeup, I suppose. But I wanted to, I was going to make a video and then edit it together and upload it later, but I thought, oh gosh, what the heck, it might be more fun and interesting to do it live, and it's an opportune time, and so it's now evening or nighttime here in Tokyo. It's around 10:30 in the evening here, and I have an hour or so to myself. So I thought, why not just go on YouTube live and just see what happens. I mean, this video will become uploaded to the channel after the fact, and so that's the state of things there here. And the question that I wanted to just talk about very generally, and hopefully see what other people might have to say about this, is the question about remakes in film. I think I have talked about this topic in a past video, or maybe in comments that have been floating around a number of videos that have been posted here on this YouTube channel. But I've received this question from a number of different people over the course of however many months. It's been quite a while, and I've been very fortunate to receive pretty much the same or similar question from a number of different places and a number of different people who've asked me, in essence, and I'm paraphrasing, Daisuke, what do you think of remakes in film? Do you have any particular favorite remakes? Do you have any films, remakes that you particularly don't like, and that sort of thing? And I should say that the general premise or approach that I always have with respect to any remake is I think the fact that I think that just because, well, let me just take a step back. I have nothing against remakes. I think remakes are healthy. I think it's perfectly legitimate to want to make a film that has already been made before. Granted, of course, there might be a lot of things going against one that wants to make a film that has been made before. So the deck might be stacked against you, so to speak, because of a certain popularity of the original film. Some people might think, and probably rightly so, that a remake might not necessarily respect the elements of the original film that made that original film so great. Maybe if it's a matter of updating the story to a more modern day setting, that sort of thing. Maybe the fact that it's updated to a modern day setting, or maybe it's updated to a different country or a different culture entirely, might lose something in translation, and maybe it might lose the flavor and the feel and the essence of the original film that made the original film so special to begin with, and that sort of thing. And of course, we might sometimes be dealing with different filmmakers, one filmmaker having made one film, and then another filmmaker making the remake film. Occasionally, we might get the same filmmaker doing a remake of his or her own film that he or she made earlier. And we've seen that there are a number of notable examples of this, which are pretty interesting. But more or less, it usually involves different filmmakers. And so, right, I completely get the idea that maybe for a lot of people, the default view on remakes is that remakes are not good. I completely get that. And perhaps in the of data analysis on this, but it could be that counting up all of the remakes in history that I've seen, it could very well be that of all of those remakes that I've seen, maybe more often than not, I'll have been disappointed for whatever reason. Who knows? Who knows? It could be that a majority that and again, I'm just speculating here to make the point that I understand the general apprehension against remakes, and whenever they're announced and whenever they have whenever there's a trailer for something, that sort of thing, whenever they're marketed. So I get that. I get that. And this is not to say that but let me take a step back here. And then, so I get the general apprehension against remakes that occurs, I think, in a lot of cinema enthusiast communities and the like. I get that, right? But I also appreciate the fact that remakes can also be very interesting and very successful endeavors, and in some cases extremely successful endeavors in terms of artistic creativity, a different approach, so to speak, towards the quote-unquote original material. And there's a lot at play here with respect to these sorts of things. I mean, it's not just a matter of trying to make a good film. It's not just a matter of trying to capture the essence of what made the original so good in the first place, but yet at the same time trying to justify the need for having a remake to begin with. I mean, if the original is so good, why have the remake at all, right? It doesn't seem to make much sense unless the remake is bringing something quote-unquote new to the table. And also, there's some kind of delicate balance that I think really needs to be addressed here with respect to the remake and the crew and the cast who are behind the remake to begin with. There's a kind of delicate balance because I think, generally speaking, it's very important to show a kind of respect and maybe reverence towards the original source material, while at the same time trying to forge one's own path. So it's not so. In other words, I think a part of a successful remake is also kind of a show of respect to the original source material, and that's either through outward acknowledgments of the filmmakers and the actors and the crew and their great contributions to whatever it was that made the original so great to begin with, while at the same time trying to forge something new or something different going forward. I should say also that the remake issue, or the remake discussion, I think can get a little bit complicated in the sense that we have to remember also what is being remade, right? Because very, very often we find that cinema is not always something that is made inside a vacuum. Right? Cinema is sometimes reacting to another art form. Sometimes, for example, maybe cinema is actually based on a piece of literature, and maybe we have different films that are based on the same work of literature, for instance, or theater, for example. So it might not necessarily be technically accurate to say that each subsequent film of a particular work of literature is itself a remake of the previous film. You know what I mean? So I think we can say something akin to, for instance, the film The Thing, right? Is The Thing a remake, or is it another adaptation of an original literary source material? I would say that it's more, I'm talking about the John Carpenter film, the remake, The Thing. And Some people, I think, call it a remake of the earlier science fiction film, but I would actually submit that it's probably more appropriate to call that film, the John Carpenter film, The Thing, to be a, a different adaptation of the original literary work rather than necessarily being a remake of the earlier film. Although I do see the other side of the coin of the assertion that the John Carpenter film is in fact a remake of the earlier film. I see both sides, but for me personally, it seems more like a new adaptation of the original literary source material. That's an example, I think, of where we can see the issue of remakes becoming, I think, very interestingly so, the relationship between cinema and theater, cinema and literature, poetry even, and that sort of thing. So what is the ultimate source material? That is one issue that I always have to deal with and think about whenever I think about this issue and specific films that I think are quote-unquote successful remakes or not. But I think for purposes of this particular discussion, I'll try to limit my comments on films that are remakes of earlier films, and we'll go from there. And I'll just forego any discussion of literary adaptations or film adaptations of literary works. I'll save that for another occasion if you're interested. If not, you can also let me know in a comment or something, and I'll be perfectly okay with that as well. But if you are interested, please let me know, and maybe I can try to talk about it some more, literature and film. But for now, let's talk about remakes. And so, as I said, my general starting point is essentially if the film is good or not. And if the film is good, then I think it's a successful film, and there we go. And I think sometimes, not always, but sometimes maybe in my head, I always have to separate out the different feelings that I have on a film. I don't know if that makes any sense. For instance, if I like a film, sometimes I'll like it because it operates well within its own parameters and its own rules that it's set up in the environment and the setting that it's depicting. And sometimes it's successful on its own merits. And then when I look at it through another lens and see if it works as a remake of this particular film, then I might have a different reaction. Maybe I'll feel the same way positively. Maybe I won't feel as positively, and that sort of thing. So my point is that I think there are different and alternate viewpoints on a single work that I think can coexist at the same time and even be contradictory and still coexist. And I think that makes for a very interesting, multifaceted, potentially multifaceted discussion on one particular work going forward. So, I mean, we can cut to the chase here, I suppose. What are some examples of remakes that I really like? And what are some examples of remakes that I don't like? I suppose the easier question would be the latter, which is remakes that I saw that I wasn't really quite enamored by. I mean, I can start with, and again, this isn't meant to be any kind of definitive list of all remakes ever made and that sort of thing. It's just a kind of small sampling of what it is I'm trying to articulate, and hopefully it might be a start of some discussions going forward. But what are some examples? I think some recent examples in the horror genre, for instance. Nightmare on Elm Street. I don't know if you saw the original film or you saw the remake, but I've never spoken about Nightmare on Elm Street on this channel before. But as a kid, watching Nightmare on Elm Street, and that I had the VHS tapes, and I was so into the series, and you know, I was a kid growing up when you know, I remember watching the first one and just being scared out of my mind, and just really going like this. Whenever I'm scared, I got scared of the film and waiting for the jump scare to occur. I always kind of close my eyes and put my fingers in my ears to block out the sound, that sort of thing. And I still do that sometimes, but that really scared the living daylights out of me. And I still have such fond memories of the first film, so much so. And then the series progressed as I grew up. Part two and part three, and even now, occasionally on my headphones, I'll listen to the song "Dream Warriors," and I'll still get a kind of an extra bounce in my step as I walk along. But the point is the remake. There was a remake that was made of A Nightmare on Elm Street. Maybe in the 2000s or so. I forget the exact year exactly, but I saw that not in the theater, but I saw that as a rental because I was curious. Because as I said, I was really into A Nightmare on Elm Street growing up, and I saw it. And I was utterly disappointed. Utterly disappointed. I really wanted to like it because I thought, oh, it's an interesting concept, and it could be updated to a new generation, updated special effects and all that stuff. But I just thought that it really, I think it lost I mean, the original was a horror film, don't get me wrong, but for some reason it seemed like the new film lost the of comic book the comic booky element of the earlier film that made it so charming and so rewatchable in my view, and it felt very like quite quite dark actually, and so I was and it felt like it was just it didn't quite necessarily capture the essence of that. Of that kind of comic book type of mystery that elevated the first film so very well, in my opinion, and so I found that to be another disappointment. Another film that I don't know if a lot of people have seen is, I don't know if you know. Do you know the film Shall We Dance? It's a Japanese film starring the very famous Japanese actor called Koji Yakusho. And Shall We Dance is a Japanese film that is really one of my favorites from that era of mainstream Japanese cinema around the early 90s or so, mid-90s. And it's such a charming film, so lovely, and it also goes to the heart of some of the dark places of daily societal living in Japan. Some of the more unspoken elements, things that might seem unsavory on the surface, but are really heartfelt and full with a lot of emotion and a lot of emotional punch. And there's a nice family drama there, and there's also a great comedy, and also a kind of in an interesting way, it feels like a coming of age story with respect to this particular Japanese businessman, or sarariman, as it's called in Japanese. I really love that film very, very much. And it was remade several years later in the United States. The same title, I think, Shall We Dance? And it starred, if I recall, Richard Gere and Jennifer Lopez. And, I have nothing against the actors. I think those two actors are really great actors. And I think they might not necessarily be considered right now anyway from critical circles to be they might not necessarily get a lot of critical attention for all of their work, but I really think that they do a lot of great work. Richard Gere, for example, I'm a great admirer of a lot of his films, and so I have nothing against him being in this film, Shall We Dance, with that is a remake of a film that I really, really love. But I just felt like the remake Shall We Dance, I wouldn't call completely unsuccessful. I felt like there was something lost in translation. It felt too happy. I don't know if that makes any sense. It felt like things were too storybooky, and they were too neat. There was a lot of great energy, don't get me wrong. It was great to see Richard Gere and Jennifer Lopez, and I thought that they handled their scenes together quite well, but it felt a little bit too much of a storybook type of. There was too much of a Hollywood sort of cleanliness about it. I don't know if that makes any sense. Whereas the earlier film has this ambiguity still, and there is a kind of ambiguity that could lead to some quite chilling conclusions actually about Japanese society if one really thinks about it, and so I really love how that film doesn't yield to any kind of 100% over sentimentality. I mean, it is a very sentimental film. Don't get me wrong, but it's not wholly sentimental. There are still pockets of what one might call seeming bits of unsavoriness, shall we say, which I really appreciate actually, and I think that's what makes the film quite interesting and very, very, very rewatchable. Whereas the remake, I think, tended to get away from that for a more almost positive spin, overly positive, I would say, which I think in the short term might sell some tickets perhaps, but in the long term, I don't think necessarily has the potential of holding very well. Which is a shame because I really wanted to enjoy that film more. I actually saw Shall We Dance, the remake, in the theater when it was first released because I was so anticipating this to be a really great film. I was really looking forward to it and enjoying it. But while I wasn't completely disappointed, I think it was a little bit of a... it wasn't a completely successful endeavor in my view. Maybe it's worth a rewatch. Who knows? But there is that. But I mean, what are some examples though of remakes that I think are probably more successful than the ones that I've just named? And again, these are just a small sampling. There are a number of, as I say, there are a number of remakes of earlier films that I think are very successful. I think the one that is the most interesting, or one of the most interesting examples for me, is a very famous example, which is the Alfred Hitchcock example, of The Man Who Knew Too Much. And he has the earlier version, the British, from his so-called British period, and the later version, James Stewart and Doris Day version from the mid-50s. And I think that both versions are really quite successful. And I love the updates of the newer version, the 50s version, over the 30s version, whereas the 30s version still has a kind of deep-rooted darkness and almost seediness that is it's quite palpable when you see it on screen. Whereas the new version has a really lovely sheen to it, although there is an element of danger that is still present, and quite ominous when it has to be. But I love that because there are updates that are made to certain elements of the film that make both films, I think, separate entities. I think one is surprised when one sees those two films and notices, while there are so many similarities in plot and character, etc., they really feel like two different entities entirely. They don't feel like they don't necessarily feel like they came from the same organic entity, as it were. They really feel distinct, and I really appreciate that and admire that for that particular example. And there's that. Another example that I think is really quite interesting is it's a remake of. It was a remake which I was reminded of on Instagram maybe a couple days ago, and it was a remake of the TV series Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, and it was remade into a film with Gary Oldman as George Smiley. Now, I must admit, I think that overall the remake of the film, the remake Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, is not as successful as the original BBC TV series starring Alec Guinness as George Smiley. It's that TV series is one of my favorite TV series ever, and so it's pretty hard to top, and it's impossible to top the TV series, in fact. But the film, I think, does an admirable job in presenting the subject matter in a way that is very concise, very compact, very moody, very thrillery, very much filled with espionage, with quick cuts of some really sinister business going on. And yet it really creates, creates a sense of suspense and also intrigue and interest, if you will. There's a great, it feels compact, and it seems to be going at a really it seems to be going at a really high intensity sort of pace, because it really just covers so much in so little time. But I love how it still stops to give us moments of character, and just let the camera linger for a little bit as things slowly envelop into the shot and into the frame, until we get this sense of dread, or some kind of portentous foreboding. At the same time, this wonderful look at a kind of retro chic feel to this place, London. And so I find this to be a very a great remake. It doesn't eclipse the original series in my view, but it certainly does. And in fact, I mentioned that work, but that could also be seen as being a different adaptation of the original literary source material by John le Carré, right? Because that was the novel Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, and so I could be going against what I originally said, which was I will try to talk about cinema versus cinema on cinema, so to speak, and not talk about literary works. But here I am talking about Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, and I've spoken about literary works. So I suppose since I've already done that, I can go ahead and tell you what my favorite quote-unquote remake is, although it's the caveat that I still consider to be the adaptation from the original source material, Campbell's Who Goes There. Of course, it is John Carpenter's The Thing. And while I acknowledge that it could be seen as a remake of the earlier science fiction film, it could also be seen as the adaptation of the literary work. Be that as it may, if we were to talk about it in the context of remakes, and I think it's a legitimate film to bring up in the context of remakes, that is, I think, the gold standard. That is the gold standard for me. That is the one that cannot, that seems to have everything right, and it hasn't aged. I mean, it's aged, of course, but it's aged so gracefully, and it's still, it's so amazing how fresh that film feels, and it seems like it goes for something that is quite unique, which is a kind of it centers in on its time period on the one hand, and yet it goes for it sort of reaches for the stars in a way, in the sense that it's going for a kind of immortality in terms of cinematic greatness. And I think it can be said that it's probably it's at least a contender for reaching that. I mean, time will tell if that is indeed a film that will remain immortal, so to speak. But I think it has a good chance of doing so. There's that. And before I go to the comments, let me mention one more, and then I'll go to the live chat here, which is the recent remake of Suspiria, the Dario Argento film Suspiria from the late 70s, and then the most recent remake of this film, directed by Luca Guadagnino, from a few years back. And I make no, I don't hesitate whenever I talk about the Dario Argento work. I think that the Dario Argento film Suspiria, it's a very violent film. It's certainly not for everyone, that's for sure. But be that as it may, it is still, it's one of the one of my favorite Italian films, and it's one of my favorite films from the latter half of the 20th century, period. And I have nothing but the utmost respect for Argento and cast and crew vis-a-vis that particular film, Suspiria. It is a masterpiece, absolute masterpiece, and it's so weirdly interesting how that film has aged. It's aged so well, but it's gone in so many different places in terms of how it's aged and how it's matured over time. It's still a scary work with a lot of scary set pieces, but its campy values, I think, have become so augmented, and the color scheme also adds to the campy values. People laugh at certain scenes. I think that's to the film's benefit, of course. But then they shriek and they sort of squirm in the chairs when we get those really famous, shocking set pieces of the film Suspiria and the like, and so. I love how that film is aged. I mean, some of those dialogue scenes, right? Don't get me wrong; they are really wonderfully hilarious, but I think in a great way, in a great kind of campy, quirky way that leaves this world of Suspiria very off-putting. It's unsettling a little bit, and there's a little bit of a disjointed quality, even with this seemingly ludicrous-sounding dialogue in some places. And I think it really works to the film's advantage. And I think that by looking at that, I can say that the film Suspiria, the Argento film, has aged so well in so many different places. It's like a really nice, mature sort of wine. But the remake, the Luca Guadagnino remake, I think is really quite good, and I've seen it on a number of occasions. Once in the theater, and then also many times on Blu-ray at home here. And I must admit that it's grown on me so much. I really found it quite impactful upon first watch, and then I find it now to be a very interesting work, and such a twist on all these elements. I mean, in many ways, the remake of Suspiria, and I don't mean this in any kind of disrespect to the original Argento work, because as I say, I adore the Argento work to bits. But in some ways, it might be even said that the new film, the Guadagnino work, might be taking the elements of these witches and the coven and all this stuff of the lore and the mythology, the world. It seems to be taking all that stuff very, very seriously, perhaps even more seriously than the Dario Argento film. And again, that's not a knock against the Argento film, but I think maybe the new film might be taking it a little bit too seriously. In other words, it might be taking those elements and trying to create this kind of mythology that I think the point of the story is not necessarily trying to develop a mythology, and I got the sense that maybe some producer or something might have been trying to hedge his or her bets, perhaps, maybe trying to set up some room for a sequel. I don't know, a remake of Inferno or something like that, or another mother, of the three mothers or something like that. But I think that's one of the great things about the original work, Dario Argento work, which is that it gave us enough mythology, but it wasn't really so hung up on all the details. It just gave us enough and just let it go, and it really didn't matter in the end what the details were. Here in the new film, there are a lot of clues as to the specifics of the mythology of this particular setup that leads to the storyline, the narrative of Suspiria, the new film. And I'm not sure if I really am on board with that quite yet. I find it to be very interesting, and I found it to be very much short-term, quite enthralling. But as time has progressed, those might elements that I don't know if they'll age as well for me as, let's say, some other elements in the new film Suspiria. The way in which dance is used to very horrific effect, the kind of physicality of that sort of thing, and the overdose of physicality leading to quite visible damage. It's really just really chilling. And even now, those scenes, I think, carry a lot of grotesque sort of weight to them. So that's a film that I think is on the successful side of remakes, as far as I'm concerned. And again, that's one of the great things about this and other remakes, because time is the ultimate judge, as it were, and time will always tell, right? And give a film some time, and maybe it will grow more in a positive direction, more in a negative direction, let alone the fact that if it's a remake or not. I mean, it's still, time and films, it's the same for all, I think. And so it's a very interesting thing. But as far as how I feel now, those are just some examples of what I look at and think about when I think about remakes, which is, again, to say that I really take it on a case-by-case basis. And I don't have a default reaction. Remakes are bad. Remakes, that sort of thing. I might have that initially, but I really will try to do my best to have, try to keep as, for my benefit anyway, I'll try to keep as open a mind as possible. And then finally, this is to say also that this is my approach, and so I don't necessarily think that everyone has to have the same approach. People can have different views. People can automatically dislike a remake because of the fact that it is a remake, etc. And I think that's still a very admirable and a very it's a very reasonable approach to have, right? Because why have a remake if we have the original, right? And I think that's the ultimate burden on the part of the remake, is trying to justify its own existence. And so sometimes it can do so successfully, sometimes it doesn't do so successfully. But that is the ultimate fun of being a cinephile and a cinema enthusiast, a film enthusiast, right? Being able to watch something and make up one's own mind as to whether a film is particularly an artistic success or not. And it really depends on who is answering that question, right? Because it could change from person to person to person. And that's what I love about cinema. Okay, so that's just a long-winded way of trying to say those comments about the remake thing. So without further ado, let me just go to the live chat and see what's been going on. So Samuel S. is here. Hi, new here. Hello, welcome. It's nice to meet you. I hope you're well. Stefanos, hello. Mike, Eli, our dear friend Mike, who has one of the best Criterion Closet videos on YouTube that I have ever seen. If you haven't checked it out already, you must check out Mike Eli's YouTube channel. And type in Mike Eli, E-L-Y, and then Criterion, and it'll come up. And you should watch it, play it, and then watch it and play it again. Just play it a lot of times, and because it's really great. So, JR62, hello, it's nice to see you, my friend. Oh, great. Yarnay is here. Pauls is here. 35 Shots of Rum is a nice little version of Late Spring, a good version of using an old story in a new generation. Very good comment there. RL Monkey 13, hello. I was watching your video about the Suspiria remake. Great. When I saw this live stream about remakes in my subscription feed. Thank you very much. What a coincidence. Alteron Kaiju, hello. It's nice to see you, my friend. Asian movie enthusiast. One of my favorite is the Korean romantic comedy Couples. Oh, great, which is a remake of the Japanese film A Stranger of Mine. Oh, great. Let's see here. Show. Jeremy Fritz, hello. Few of my favorite remakes are The Fly, The Thing, Maniac, The Hills Have Eyes, Suspiria, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and Piranha. All took the original's premise but then made it their own. Invasion of the Body Snatchers. That's another one. That is another one. Oh, yes. That, man. That is, man, Gosh, I should talk about that one of these days. It's Wolfrats, Maltese Falcon. Yes, yes, yes. Is better than either the original or the Dire Satan Metal Lady. There's another one I want to talk about. Legion, hello. I don't know about least favorites, but my favorite horror remakes are Evil Dead and The Hills Have Eyes. I actually like them more than the original. That's interesting. That's interesting. You know, I also like the Evil Dead remake too. I must admit, I'm a slightly bigger fan of the original, but I think the remake was quite good actually. So the Cinematheque is here. Hi Daisuke, was sad to hear about the death of Joe Shido. Yes, yes, I was so that was such a sad bit of news that that I caught today. Shido Joe. Oh gosh, yeah, yeah, he's such an icon, and he left behind such an incredibly impressive body of work. But I think if I had to say something, it's just he. I mean, there's so many actors that were like the epitome of cool on cinema, but he was sort of oozing coolness, and had this kind of this almost devil may care sort of twinkle in his eye that you know, he was likable, but he was also kind of a. I mean, he could play all sorts, but he was. Wow, man, there's a wonderful twinkle in his eye, and he had that really fascinating look. You know what I mean? That fascinating look in his, obviously his visage and his face, etc. But so fascinating, such an icon, will be missed. Yes. Wolfrats, yes, arguably the original The Man Who Knew Too Much may have some advantages on the remake, yes. Let's see, will you see the remake of Clue? Oh, I says, I. So, oh gosh. Are they remaking Clue? Is that what it's, wow, that's interesting. I heard about, I don't know if it's a remake or a sequel. I'm not sure. There were those rumors before about like Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, being involved, I think, in Big Trouble in Little China. But I don't know if that's still going on. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about the Clue remake as well. But as I say, if it's interesting, it's certainly worth a consider. That's for sure. Mike Eli says, is mentioning The Thing, the John Carpenter's The Thing. I mentioned Scarlet Street. Great. Theodore's here. Hello. Let's see. Isaac Dunn says, hello, Daisuke. My two favorite remakes off the top of my head are A Fistful of Dollars and Little Shop of Horrors. Very interesting, yes. Oh, gosh. So Little Shop of Horrors. So, oh, man, I haven't thought of that film in such a long time. But I remember, I didn't see it in the theater. But I saw it almost concurrently with its release because it had been released on VHS after its theatrical run. It was great, great. Oh yeah. Oh, now I've got the song "Little Shop of Horrors" in my head. Little Shop of Horrors in my head now. So, oh, thank you very much. It's fine with me. Carl Reese says, top 5, The Thing, The Fly, The Departed. Ah, The Departed, interesting. Yes, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. True Grit. Herzog, Nosferatu as well. Legion, The Departed. Yes, Scarface, great remakes. Samuel Solaris comes to mind. Ah, very interesting. Solaris, yes, yes. Zyrothers says, Solaris 2002 is wonderful. Yes, I think that is an interesting remake too, or an interesting version of the film, of the story, let me say. Yes, Wolfgrat says, I will admit True Grit is probably a better reflection on the original book. Very interesting. Ben Van Ness. Oh, the worst remake for me is The Vanishing. Yes. That is a, go for the original on that one. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, yeah, but, the remake had Jeff Bridges in it, if I recall correctly. But it's the best you say is probably Cronenberg's The Fly. Oh yes, The Fly, The Fly. That is another one that I I have such great memories of that. That I saw that as a kid, as too young, frightened me and disgusted me so much. But that is, and it's so emotional. I love the relationship there. It really makes it, it brings it over the line for me too. Great. The Cinematheque says 1998 remake of Psycho has to be my least favorite remake of all. That is an interesting one too. I must admit, I was very perplexed by that film. The was it Gus Van Sant film, Psycho. It was purported to be a shot-by-shot remake of the 1960 film Psycho, but in fact, it's not even a shot-by-shot. There are some differences, some really weird differences with the original film. That's not to say that differences are inherently weird, but they're kind of like bizarre and out of nowhere, and they created this sort of almost mesmerizing confusion. And I mean, I there are some specific details that I want to say, but I don't want to spoil it in case anyone hasn't seen the remake of the film. But yeah, that had some interesting. That had some interesting. God, maybe I should watch that again, but I'm not sure about that. That's a pretty interesting experiment. Let me put it that way. Wolfgat says the remake of The Killers is pretty good. Well, Youthless 1, Believer, the 2018 Korean remake of John To's Drug War, is not as great as the original, but is still very good. Also, rest in peace, Joe Shito. Thank you very much for your great comments. Heirloom Providence, hello. Werner Herzog remake of Nosferatu is a great remake. Kinski is amazing in it. Patrick Doherty, hello. There are so many remakes which are reasonably good films, but just seem totally unnecessary and add nothing new. On the other hand, if a remake tries to be different, it can lead to criticism. That is that's a great way of putting the dilemma, the inherent dilemma of the making of remakes. You put it well, so well, Patrick. Well done. Much better than I could ever put it. Asian movie enthusiast, yes. The Hollywood remake of Apartment 13103 is probably the worst one I've seen. The original wasn't even that good, but the remake is completely unwatchable. Carl Reese says, what do people think of Friedkin's Sorcerer as a remake of Wages of Fear? I'm a fan of both, but I'd probably give the edge to Wages of Fear as a better film. Sorcerer's Bridge scene is amazing, though. And also the score. The score is really amazing. Let's see. Zyrothus says Sorcerer I like a lot more, but both are worth watching. Wolfgratz, I'd agree over Nosferatu. Dungeon Studios here. Hello. Rep Reviews. Hello. Daisuke. Greetings from New York. Hello, Rep Reviews. Let's see. Zyrothus says The Bat Whisperers is a remake of the director's own release from The Bat, essentially a sound version, albeit much better. Let's see. So I'm just skipping around here. Jeremy Fritz mentions House of Wax. Was a great remake of The Mystery of the Wax Museum. Pete, 1972. Hello, it's nice to see you. Ultraman Kaiju, would you consider Shin Gojira a remake, Daisuke? That is a tough question. I would say, as an initial response, no. I wouldn't necessarily call it a remake. It does feel it's obviously I don't know how to explain it. It's obviously a kind of reworking of the original source material. Let me put it that way. So actually, in fact, let me actually take it back. The more I think about it, the more I probably would actually say it could be a remake. It could be a remake of the original film, the 54 film, because it has those elements of the initial discovery of the monster, what the mystery of what this is, and all that, and then trying to set up defenses, and it's essentially, yes, it could, yes, actually, no, I do think it's a remake. Actually, I do think so. Although it has an interest. I hesitate because it also has an interesting place in terms of a franchise as well. I mean, that's another element that could be seen to be of of an interesting thing, this idea of franchises and reboots and all that. But I think, yeah, legitimately, so one can say that once something that's quote unquote a reboot of something is still a remake. So, yeah, thank you. That's a great question. Mike says, I think the 80s remake of The Blob was done really well. Very different from the original, except for the killer blob, of course. Yes, actually, I saw the remake first before I saw the Steve McQueen film. So I might be a little bit biased there, but I remember seeing that film, and that was really wow. Yeah, there's a scene involving a drain, a sink drain. Oh, all right, yeah. So, but let's see. Pete 1972 says some of my favorite remakes are The Thing, Scarface, and A Fistful of Dollars. The Pool Hustler Man, excuse me, The Pool Hustler Man. One of my favorite is 12 Monkeys, right, by Terry Gilliam, which is technically taken from the short film La Jetée. Yes, that's a very interesting example. I really think 12 Monkeys is such a successful artistic endeavor. La Jetée is brilliant. Really is so experimental and creative, and it's also very touching, very, very touching. And it does so much with its short running time. But 12 Monkeys is, I think, it takes those elements and really turns them into something quite special. So, two great examples there. Asian Movie Enthusiast says, I agree about Shall We Dance. Yeah, the remake was underwhelming. I do think Jennifer Lopez was a problem, though she lacked the nuance of the original actress. Yeah, perhaps. JR62, let's see. Oh, hello. Carl says the new take on Dune, yes, is one of my most anticipated films to come this year. It shouldn't be too hard to outdo the original, especially with a director like Villeneuve. Yes, and that's another one where we have many different takes on Dune, right, in terms of the visual medium, and then we have the original source novel, the Herbert source novel. So I admit I've read the novel. It's I right I'm not the biggest Dune expert, but I've read it. I've read it twice actually. So I'm looking forward to the Villeneuve film as well. Pete 1972's yes, you and JR62 are having a great conversation. Jeremy Fritz says, I love the new Planet of the Apes films as well. Oh yes, that's a very good point. Yes. Chris D, hello. My personal favorites are Suspiria, True Grit, The Thing. Hate Ghostbusters and Aladdin remakes. So the Ghostbusters film, that was an interesting one for me. I saw that with my daughter. She loved the film, the remake. I mean, but then I showed her the original Ghostbusters film, and she just was over the moon, thrilled with that film. And so I think my sense is that she liked the earlier film better than the remake, although I'd have to ask her about that. Okay. Wolfkratz is talking about here The Man Who Knew Too Much. Yes, the earlier film with Peter Lorre. Yes. Okay, just skipping around here. Let's see. Christy mentions the American Godzilla. Pool Hustlerman says The Ring. And Zyrus says, I want a remake of Trancers. Oh, that's interesting. A Touch of Film is here. Hello. Our dear friend, Touch of Film. Dungeon Studio, The Day the Earth Stood Still remake was just awful. RoboCop, yuck. I didn't see the remake of RoboCop, actually. That had Gary Oldman in it as well, right? I didn't see that one. Did that have Gary Oldman? I incidentally, it's not a remake, but I really think I really like RoboCop 3. It's not my favorite of the films, but and I actually remember I saw RoboCop 2 when I was a kid in the theater, and I went with my cousin, and we were the same age. I think she was 1 year younger than I, perhaps. I haven't seen, I don't talk with her that much anymore, unfortunately. But when we were kids, we visited each other. Her mother was my mother's sister, and so they were pretty close, although we lived in different countries. And when we were little, I think it was, who was it? I forget who took us, but we were maybe, however old I was when RoboCop 2 was released in the theaters. And, it was in the late 80s, I think, so I would have been, what, maybe 8 or 9, I think, maybe younger, I forget. But yeah, we saw that in the theater. I don't know what we were expecting, or what we expect. We've gone in. It was just so, for us at the time, it was just like there's a lot of blood and cutting and all this stuff, and my cousin was just not having any of it. She was just wanted to get out of there immediately. I was just so into the film. I wanted to stay. I thought, oh, this is so great. I love this. I love it. But my cousin wasn't really having it. So I think she was trying to be a good sport about it and trying to stay with the film as much as possible. I think in the end, though, we had to leave because it was just too much for her. But oh gosh, but I ended up watching it later anyway. So yeah, RoboCop 2. It's not a remake story, but yeah, and also I like RoboCop 3. Let's see. So touch of film. Best remake is Reservoir Dogs, remake of City on Fire. GR62, Godzilla 1998 is a remake of Giant Gila Monster. Let's see, Car Race, technically Heat is a remake, right? Never seen LA Takedown. Actually, I've seen LA Takedown. Yeah, I think, that's an interesting one. I don't, it would be great. There aren't any releases of Heat on Blu-ray that have LA Takedown as a supplement, right? I think that would be a great supplement to have, to look at those two films side by side and see how they stack up. There are some differences, sure. There are some scenes that are basically patterned after each other. It's really, really fascinating. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Yeah, but that would be one where I'd say, yeah, Heat is the superior film, or the remake is the superior film. Heat, man, that's a film that's been getting a lot of mentioning here on this channel lately, so that's great. Dungeon Studio is saying, is talking about The Thing. Thing just revolutionized remakes, purely standalone, yet doesn't shame the original. Very good point, my friend. Yeah, Christie says, I will call Heat an adaptation rather than a remake. That's a good point. Wolfgrat says The Body Snatchers is pretty good, although I still prefer the original. Let's see, just scrolling down here. Yeah, it's Jeremy Fritz makes another great point, which I think adds to the complexity of this issue, which is it's hard to know sometimes how to define certain films. Exactly. For example, should Hammer, Frankenstein, Dracula, Mummy, etc. films of the 50s, 60s, and 70s be considered remakes? That is a very good point, and I think that adds to a complexity. There's a certain sense of, are we talking about remakes or this idea of franchises? I mean, I don't even know if these are franchises in the modern sense of the word, but you know what I mean, like film series, etc. That sort of thing, or not even series within the same studio, but maybe series that has a continuation of a particular character, but done in a different way, or that sort of thing. Very interesting point, and one that it's a point that I don't necessarily have a really good answer to. But I acknowledge that it exists, the issue anyway. Pete 1972 says, I love the both 50s and 70s invasion of the Body Snatchers, though I give the original slight edge. Dungeon Studio says, indeed, there's different tempos to them for different moods, I find. Iman Tool, hello. Hi, Daisuke, everyone. I think the term remake is limiting. I consider them more like different adaptations of source material. That says Invasion of the Body Snatcher is great. Yeah, I think actually, it's the term remake, I think, can be limiting. Although you bring up the point about like different adaptations of source material, and I think. I don't know if maybe you joined in later in the live stream, and so that's okay. But earlier in the live stream at the very start, I was actually made the point of trying to say that it's actually a much more complicated issue than the idea of, oh, a remake. Do I like remakes of films or not? I think it's actually much more complicated, and you allude to it very nicely. But I acknowledged at the very start that we're dealing also with the idea of, are we talking about remakes of films or or adaptations of different adaptations of the same source material, which it could be itself a film or a play or a piece of literature or other work of art. And I acknowledge that completely. So it's actually, the approach to this issue is actually much more complicated than I think and it's much more complicated. I think it's not possible for me to address everything in one particular live stream or video. But that being said, I love your choice of Invasion of the Body Snatchers too, my friend. Let's see. Jeremy Fritz says, I love the first two Body Snatchers films, but there have been 4 in total, and 93 and '07 versions were not very good. Let's see. Wolfgratz is talking, yes, I don't really see those as remakes, to be honest, but the various remakes of the original Dracula are retellings, a bit like Jane Eyre or Pride and Prejudice. Yes, that's another interesting point, retellings. And Wolfgratz, you sort of allude to something that leads me to another point that I didn't mention, because I think it opens up another can of worms, so to speak. But it's almost like akin to theater and different stage productions of a particular play or a particular musical or work or opera or anything like that. This idea of different people or different crews or different actors or different performers or different musicians or whatever coming together at a particular point in time to create something that is a representation of that particular work or underlying drama. So I think that principle holds very well in theater, the idea of different productions from different years, etc. And so I think that allusion or that metaphor or that comparison, I think, could legitimately hold its own in the world of cinema as well. And for whatever reason, I don't know if that hasn't taken hold as much in cinema as much as it is in theater. And I have a few ideas as to why, but it's an interesting thing to think about, which is that, why is it more acceptable, let me say, that we can have different productions of the same underlying work, whereas in cinema it seems to be maybe less so or not as prevalent as much, although there are a lot of great examples of it. And maybe my description of it being not as accepted in cinema is probably not accurate, because the more I think about it, the more I realize that these do occur in cinema quite frequently. The idea of different films being based on the same source material, not necessarily being considered remakes of each other, of course, but I think the same holds true for different productions based on the same underlying theatrical work, for instance. So maybe as I said, that's a different can of worms than what I'm trying to focus on here. But right. What does E.M. Forster say? Only connect, right? Just connect. So let's see. All right, so I'm sorry. Mike Eli says, I might be alone in this one, but I love Vanilla Sky as a remake of the Spanish film Open Your Eyes. Yes. I was listening to the Paul McCartney song Vanilla Sky the other day, by the way. It's quite a coincidence. Let's see. Dungeon Studio says Gus Van Sant's Psycho may be the only actual remake out of everything. That's a very interesting point. Okay, let's see here. I've jumped in the chat, so I am I am officially lost again. Now, I always do this. Okay, let's see here. Oh gosh, I'm doing this all the time. All the time I do this. It's not good. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Good, good. Okay, just keep going here. Scrolling down, scrolling down. Oh, Razor Wire Reviews is here. Luke, our dear friend, is here. And I think I got a notification. Not I think, I did get a notification about a video that you uploaded about Twin Peaks. So if you haven't checked out Razor Wire Reviews videos, especially his most recent one, I think, Luke's recent one, I think it's an unboxing of the Twin Peaks limited edition set. You got to check it out. Got to check it out. I will probably check out that YouTube video after I finish with this live stream. So really great. So Razor Wire Reviews is in the house, and I owe Luke a lot. You know, I probably should make a separate video, and I probably will, but you know, I really owe him a lot. You know, he was one of he was one of, or he, you know, he is one of my YouTube kind of heroes, and Razor Wire Reviews, right? And that's a great channel, and I've been a fan of it, the channel, since way back before I started YouTube and all that. But you know, before, and he and I are very good friends, and but before we became acquainted, you know, he actually mentioned my channel on his own channel one day out of the blue. You know, he didn't know me. He didn't have to do this. He didn't have to mention my channel by name and anything like that. But he did very graciously. And, you know, even to this day, I get comments from people saying, you know, I found your channel, Daisuke. I found your channel from the recommendation that Luke at Razor Wire Reviews gave to me. And so I owe Luke at Razor Wire Reviews so much, so much, and I you know, I am always so happy when he uploads you know, videos to his channel, and I will forever be grateful. He has this really interesting sort of numbering system, you know, really fascinating. I mean this in a very complimentary way, Luke. You know, your mind is very, your mind operates in a way that is so fascinating, and I can't quite. It's hard for me to keep up, because you have this very intricate way of numbering things, like you know. Asian Movie Festival Season 2, Volume 3, Part 4, or something like that. I'm like, wow, it's like all these intricate little permutations and stuff. So that means that, but that's just a way of, another way of saying that he has so much stuff going on in his YouTube channel. It's really amazing. So you've got to check it out if you haven't already. But the chances are that if you know my channel, you already know Razor Wire Reviews already. You don't need me to tell you. But in the off chance you don't know, you've got to check out Razor Wire Reviews. Okay, so I'm just skipping around here. If I skipped your comment, I apologize, but it is getting a little bit late. It's almost midnight, so I must get going soon. Christian Perez is here. Hello. Best remakes: The Thing, The Fly, Maniac, Suspiria, The Hills Have Eyes, The Departed. Let's see. Skipping around here. Okay. Again, if I skip your comment, I apologize. Really apologize. I don't want to skip anyone here. Henry G is here. Hello. Okay. Sorry. Let's see. The oncoming storms here, but I see maybe a message was retracted. I don't know. If you're still here, hello. I hope you're well. Um, oh, Guillaume de Machaut. I hope I got that correct. Hello. Hello, it's nice to see you. Endless Mike is here. Hello. Um, Stavrian 77. Hello. It's nice to see you, my friend. Tim Holm. Hello. R.I.P. Joe Shisto. Yes. Yes, I mentioned it earlier in the stream, but yes, that was such an icon. Yeah. Yeah. John Perry. Hello. Oh, you mentioned Dawn of the Dead. Yeah, that's I didn't mention that one as well, but um, I know it has its. I know the remake has its fans, but yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, and here we go. I've just okay. Here we go. Let's see. Just skipping around here again. I apologize if I've skipped over your comments. I see. I skipped over. I think someone mentioned was Dungeon Studio mentioned Cape Fear. I think that's another interesting one. Um, let's see. Oncoming Storm says, although I haven't seen the 1997 Norwegian original film, Christopher Nolan's Insomnia was quite good. Yeah. Let's see. David Jones is here. Hello, talking about the Blob. And let's see. Sorry about this. Sorry about this. I am just. Harvey Snow Leopard is here. Hello. You're in LA. Oh, that's great. And you watched War and Peace. Great, fantastic. Yes, I was asking about that, and I'm glad. I'm so glad. Thank you very much for remembering. I'm so glad you remember that. I was curious as to what you thought about that, but I'm glad. Let me know. You don't have to say now. I have to go now, so maybe I don't have time to talk in the live chat, unfortunately, about that, but. Feel free to leave a comment in some video anywhere, and it doesn't have to be connected to the video. It can be a random comment. I don't mind. It's very important for me to hear your thoughts about War and Peace. And that's true for everyone as well. If you want to talk to me about a particular film that you've seen that you really want to share your thoughts on, you can feel free to leave it in a comment into any video on this YouTube channel. You don't have to feel like you have to have a comment that is relevant or related to the topic that I'm talking about in a particular video. You can have random comments. I don't mind about particular films. Now, that doesn't mean that I would be able to respond to everything in great depth or detail. So as long as you understand that, still, I'm always open to that. So you can let me know what you thought of a particular film and just leave it in a comment somewhere anywhere, and I'll be sure to see it. So, all right. So let's see. Let's see here. Okay, and I am. And Pete's mentioning Arrow and Jodorowsky's films. Arrow's really, and they had the recent release about the Kieślowski set as well. Yeah, they're doing a lot of great work, really, really great work. So, anyway, okay, so I am at the end here. So if I've missed your comment, and I've missed a bunch of comments, as I acknowledge fully, I apologize very sincerely from the bottom of my heart. I didn't mean to do that. No malice on my part, please believe me. But still, it's getting a little bit late here, and so I really have to get going and start getting ready for bed. And I have to watch that Twin Peaks limited series Blu-ray box. No, Twin Peaks limited box set unboxing, I think, from our dear friend Razor Wire Reviews. So there's that. And I think I was going to try to make a video about this, but yeah, I really want to encourage anyone out there who I really want to encourage anyone out there who is thinking about doing YouTube or thinking about making a podcast or doing a blog or something like that. I'm always interested in seeing what it is you have to say about a particular film. I mean, the live chat is a great example, of course. Really great, really fun for me. And also, if you have like a blog or a podcast or a channel that you're doing or you're trying to do or something like that, or is still on the fence, should I do it or should I not do it, that sort of thing, please, I encourage you to give it a try. No, there's no harm in trying, at the very least. The people that come to mind immediately, I mean, they were here. I mentioned Razor Wire Reviews, of course. A Touch of Film, Asian movie, and I mean, A Touch of Film is one of the great channels ever. Asian movie enthusiast, one of the greats. I had the great pleasure of meeting Eric, actually, in person, and so what a great lunch that was, and I still remember with fondness the lunch that we had. And it was a great conversation. So Asian movie enthusiast, that's another great channel, and another recent one, right? Mike Eli, right, and his great Criterion Closet video, and hopefully that's just one of many. And I hope that video, like, I'm waiting for it to get whatever it is, 1 million views or something like that. And if that happens, or 1 million plus, and if that happens, that'll be really great. But that's another example of a channel, a friend of ours in this live chat, who did something, a YouTube kind of expression. And so I was very much taken by that. And in other words, it's such a thrill for me to be able to sort of associate a channel with the words that I'm so used to reading in comments and comment responses and live chats and stuff. It's just so much nice. It's so much nicer for me to be able to associate it. What's the phrase? To associate a name with a face. It's that sort of thing. It's this idea of allowing me on my end of the screen to get a better sense of who you are and what drives your own interests in cinema. It's really fascinating for me. So if you are thinking about doing that sort of thing, having a YouTube channel talking about cinema, or a podcast talking about cinema, or a blog or something, a cinema related blog or something like that, please do so. Please give it a try. And if you do, please let me know. I'd be very, very, very interested to check that out. So that's sort of an open invitation, of course, to anyone who's interested about that. And with that, I will go. But I see, Jordan Timmerman is here. Hello. Oh, I thank you for your kind comments about my Reddit post on A Brighter Summer Day. Your recommendations are life-changing. Well, you are too kind, Jordan. Yes, I responded to you. I saw that Reddit thread. This is another thing. I just started to do more Reddit reading, and I registered or whatever it was, and I've started to reply to a number of the threads in Reddit. So really interesting stuff I'm seeing. So I haven't responded to a lot of things, and not, when I say responded, I don't mean threads that are focused on me or anything like that. I mean just threads that are focused on this is my favorite film, or I've seen this film, or I'm watching this Criterion. Just these threads that I think are really excellent that I just wanted to respond to and just add a little comment saying, oh, this is a great thread or something. And one of those threads was, something, it was about A Brighter Summer Day. And I was just, every time I see something like that, it always makes me very happy. And I think, what did I say? I think, reading that comment really made my day. I think that's what I said. So it really did, because any mention of that film is, for whatever reason, whenever I see that film mentioned, especially with the enthusiasm that you mentioned it, you mentioned it with, I think it makes my heart so full. I don't know if that makes sense. So, and Samuel says, "What's your Reddit name?" Yes, it's a very original name. I think it's just Daisuke Beppu. So you can find me there. I know a lot of people have a lot of different names, and so I was actually thinking of a different name, but Daisuke Beppu is it's, as I say, very original. So you can check me out. Maybe I'll do some more responses to some threads there. So if you see me there, please feel free to say hello, and I'd love to have a chat with you there. It's great. It's a lot of fun, and once again, I must give my thanks to everyone in the Reddit group who's been very warm and very kind with words of support and the like. It's been really quite overwhelming. So I must once again say thank you very much, and it's primarily because of that I decided to try to be a little bit more active in that subreddit group. So anyway. Yeah, so anyway, my friends, thank you for, yeah, so if you want to try to find me on Reddit, you can. You can also find me on Instagram. My name there is also simply Daisuke. I think it's, on Instagram it's different because there are many Daisuke Beppus there. So I'm Daisuke Beppu 4. So I'm Daisuke Beppu the 4th on Instagram. So you can find me on Instagram, and I've unprivated my Instagram account. So if you want to follow it, you can. You don't have to, but if you want to, you can, and that's perfectly fine with me. And if you have any Instagram account that that is cinema related, you want more attention, not attention, but if you want more people to know about it or something like that, or please feel free to let me know. You can mention it here, or if you want if you want more if you want more people to know about your particular like, I don't know, cinema-related Facebook group or something like, please let me know. I'm anything that's cinema-related, I'm very happy to take a look at that, and I'm sure a lot of people here would be very interested as well. So anyway, that's it for now, my friends. So it's now 11:55 p.m. here. The 21st, but soon to be the 22nd of January. So thank you very much. And yes, and Razorwire Reviews says that was a good stream. Not Daisuke does a Macho Man impression good, but still pretty good. Yes, no Macho Man impressions today. Maybe next time. Maybe next time. So I'll have to think of what else to do. But my impressions are pretty bad. But thank you very much for remembering Macho Man. Thank you very much. It's another discussion, WWF, WWE, and the like. But yeah, don't get me started, otherwise I won't be able to sleep. Okay. I just watch your video. So okay. So thank you very much, my friends, and please be well. And okay. Oh gosh, before I go, let's see. Zé Moderno. Hello, I just caught you before I left, so thank you very much. So I hope you're still here, and hello from Brazil. You are the best. No. You are too kind. You're very kind. Thank you very much. I'm very fortunate because I've been very fortunate to be able to upload a few videos on YouTube. So but your words are very, very kind. So I really appreciate that very much, and thank you very much, and hello to you in Brazil, and greetings from Tokyo. And Mike Eli, yes, thank you enough for all the praise. Yes, you've got to check out Mike Eli's video. I did a search for Mike, and I think more than one Mike Eli came up. So if you want to find the Criterion video, type in Mike Eli Criterion. That'll probably get you the video on one go. So yeah, just check it out, and check out that video. That is amazing, absolutely amazing. I'm sorry. I have to mention this to you, Mike, if you're still here before I go. I love how you included the Criterion Closet discussion. You remember Ethan Hawke? Was it Ethan Hawke who said, he was saying like I can't believe that Criterion included Tootsie, which happens to be one of the greatest films, you know what I mean? I loved how Ethan Hawke kind of caught himself in mid-sentence, and I think he probably realized that maybe the filmmakers of Tootsie or the fans of Tootsie were probably watching the closet video and just caught himself a little bit too late, but he still recovered. So I loved how you included that little audio clip in the video, Mike. That was really funny. That's one. So that was Ethan Hawke too, right? Am I remembering correctly? If not, then please let me know. Yes, Ethan Hawke. Thank you very much. Thank you. So, okay. This Dungeon Studio says you're going to turn into a pumpkin. Yes, I know. I'm gonna be just. I have to go. I have to go sleep, but I have to watch the Razor Wire reviews, Luke's channel's video on the Twin Peaks box set, and oh gosh, I'm not gonna do an unboxing, but sorry about that. Yes. So anyway, my friends, thank you very much, and I hope you're well. Cheers. Take good care of yourselves, and keep watching a lot of great movies. And let me know if you see anything that's really good. I always like to hear about it. So, okay. Thank you very much, my friends. Cheers and good night. Okay. Thank you very much. So, I think I'm gonna start watching the. Yeah, I'm gonna start watching the. What do maybe I'm gonna. I don't want to watch it. I'm gonna watch it on my phone. I'll watch your video on my phone, Luke. So, looking forward to it. Thank you very much. So I wonder if you should do a ranking, Luke, about the best Twin Peaks music. I've I'm listening to that soundtrack almost nonstop. So I really love that. Um, the soundtrack to that. I mentioned it before, but I think I'm just absolutely just smitten with all the songs there. But in particular, I'm just so taken by the two songs by was it Au revoir Simone, Lark, and what was the other song? It's not on the soundtrack, but it's what a violent yet flammable world. I think I got the title correct. I love those songs; those are really great. But uh, yeah. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm just going overboard. I have to go. So anyway, I'll watch your video, Luke, and to everyone else, good night and be well, and talk to you very soon. Cheers.